vaccine guilt, that I had received it, because when I did receive it, it wasn't clear when the rest of my colleagues and our residents here in Brookline would receive it. So there were a few days where I was feeling a little guilty.
And now look at you, all your
and now look at me. I'm not guilty about that at all. I got plenty of other things to be guilty about. So I don't.
Right, but you're not a virus spreader to other people.
God willing. Although I understand that, as Ben said, the vaccine is 95% effective. That does mean, of course, that one person out of 20 is still susceptible. It doesn't mean that one person out of 20 will get it. But I do have a friend who had the vaccine back in September, and she did actually catch the virus. So it's not impossible. That's the 80% that Ben was talking about. We really need the 80% of people to get the vaccine so that we get to herd immunity.
That's what happened in Israel too.
Yeah, exactly. It's not uncommon. It makes perfect sense. 1 in 20 people is a lot of people.
That's why cattle
who remain susceptible
herd immunity.
Yeah. But and Norma is exactly right in her text. The people that have gotten, in 2 ways. I know 2 people that got the one who had the vaccine several months ago. The case was extremely mild, and there was someone who got the vaccine just as they were incubating the disease, and that person's case was also very mild. So if you, as soon as you can get it, I honestly recommend you to do so. I know it's a little bit more complicated for people who do not live in congregant housing.
Oh.
All right, so good Shabbos. We will now turn to page 147 in our books. I will put that up on the screen. And good Shabbos, Susan. And I see Lauren has also joined us.
And Adina.
And Adina. So good Shabbos, everybody. Let's see here. Let's go here.
And Petra.
I said good Shabbos to Petra before you came on, Susan.
He's ahead of you.
I'm ahead of you, exactly. Oh, don't tell me this is not going to work today. Oh, this is unbelievable. Nope, not going to work. All right, we're going to go to Plan B here. Okay. Shochenahad Maharom Bekadosh Shemo Bechatuv and Tzadikim Badonai Yeshavim Nahavatihillah V'Pi Yesharim Itala Udivrei Tzadikim Tihipara Ubilshon Chasidim Tihitroma Kerev Kedoshim Tihitkadash Uvmakahalot Rivivot Hamachabit Israel Birinait B'Shem Chamakin B'Chol Dor V'Ador Sheken Chovat Puitrim Lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu V'Elokei Avotenu V'Imotenu Lehodot La'alel L'Shabeach L'Tfa'el L'Ramim L'Ader L'Avrei Kolei L'Kolei Salkol Divrei Shivot Petish Bechut David ben Ishai Abdecha Meshichecha. I invite you to rise as you are able. Ishtabach Shimcha Lahad Malkeinu La'el HaMelech HaGadol Agadosh Bashamayim V'Haaretz Ki Lechanai Adonai Eloheinu Elohe Avotinu Matenu Shiur Shachar Le'Uzimah O Shememshala Netzach V'Nolurah Tzilat Tiberet Kedosha V'Malchut Brachot V'Avrahot V'Yata V'Yad Olam Baruch Atah Adonai El Melech Gadol B'Tishbachot El Haorot Adonai Niflaot Habocher B'Shirei Zim HaMelech Melchei HaOlamim. Excuse me. Miriam, would you mind being the respondent for the Kaddish and the Baruch?
Sure.
Great. Page 148. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yalmad Yivrachute, V'yamlech Malchute, V'chayechon, V'mechon V'chaydacho B'Yit Yisrael. V'galav Yizman Kaviv, V'imavru.
Amen. Hey, Shemei Rabbah.
Yivarach, V'yishtabach, V'yipa'ar V'yiprumam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitalik V'yitolal Shemei V'kutsha. La'el Amin Kol Berchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechamata, Damiran B'alma V'imavru. Amen.
Amen.
Page 149. Baruch Hu et Adonai Mevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Le'olam Va'ed. You may be seated. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Yotzei Or U'Berei Choshech Usei Shalom Shalom U'Berei Et HaKol Yotzei Or U'Berei Choshech Usei Shalom Shalom U'Berei Et HaKol HaKol Yoducha HaKol Yishadchucha HaKol Yomerin Kadosh Kadonai HaKol Yomerucha Sela Yotzei HaKol. Each day, God, you raise the gates of the east, open the windows of the sky, bring forth the sun from its place and the moon from where it sits, illuminating the entire world and all its inhabitants whom you created with mercy. With kindness you illumine the earth and all who dwell in it, and your goodness day after day you renew creation. Sovereign, you alone ruled on high from the very beginning, praised, glorified, and exalted since earliest time. Elohei olam b'rachamecha rabim rachim aleinu adonu zenu tzum miskabenu magen yishenu ma'istabenu ave'adenu el ke'echecha ve'en zulatecha efes biltecha umidome lach en ke'echecha Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh ve'en zulatecha Malkeinu Chaye Am Haba Efes Piltecha Go Aleinu Limot Hamashiach V'yenu Melecha Moshienu L'techiat Hametim El Adon Al Kol Ha'Ma'asim Baruch Umborach V'fikol Neshama Baruch V'tuvo Malei Olam Da'at Utvuna Soba V'moto Hamikael Chayot HaKodesh V'neda B'chavod Al HaMerchava Zechot U'misho Lifnei Chiso Chesed V'rachamim Lifnei Chavodo Tovim Me'ochar Shebacha Eloheinu Yitzaram B'da'at V'vina Uvaskel Koach U'gvura Natan Bahem Elihiot Moshelim Bekerev Tevel Meleim Ziv Umfikim Noga Nae Zivam Bechol HaOlam Samechim Betzitam Besasim Bevoam Ohosim Be'em Achertzon Kohunam Bechavod Noknim Lishmo Tochola Bechina Lezecher Malchuto Kara Lashemesh Vayizrach Ohra Ve'in Surat Al-Bana Shevach Nodnim Lo Kol Tzeva Marom Tiferet וגדולה שרפים ויופנים בחיות הקודש. יאללה לה 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 לה, יאללה 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 לה 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 לה, יאללה לה 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 לה, יאללה לה לה לה, יאללה לה 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 לה, יאללה לה לה, יאללה לה לה לה, יאללה לה לה, יאללה לה לה לה, יאללה לה לה, יאללה לה לה, יאללה לה לה, יאללה לה לה לה. I la 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 I la 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 la. Page 152. La he la sheshava mikol ha'maasim bayom hashvi'i titala yashav al kisei kivodo. Such is the praise of the seventh day that God ceased all world. And so the seventh day itself praises God and says, a song of Shabbat, it is good to thank Adonai. Let all creatures likewise celebrate and bless God, offering praise, honor, and glory to God, the ruler, creator of all, who in holiness grants peaceful rest to the people of Israel on the holy Shabbos. Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu Yikadash, v'zechercha malkeinu yitpa'ah, v'shamayim u'me'a'aretz v'ya'aretz mitachat. Barach Moshiach Shevich Maaseh Yadecha V'Yame'orei Or Shasita Yifaru Chasela. Page 153. Barach Tzurenu Moshe Malkenu V'Olenu V'Orei Kedushim V'Shtavah Shemcha Lad Malkenu. Yivrei L'chaim U'Melech Olam Kulam Achuvim Kulam Bivruim, Kulam Giborim, V'chulam Osim B'Ema V'Ovira, V'tzon Konam, V'chulam Putechim Et B'yem B'Kedusha U'Torah, V'Shira U'Zimra, V'Verachim U'Shavachim, V'Varim U'Mareitzim U'Makdishim, U'Mamlichim, Et Shem Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol HaGibor VaHaNorah Kadosh Hu. וכולם מקבלים עליהם כל מלכות שמיים זה מזה, וכולם מקבלים עליהם כל מלכות שמיים זה מזה, וכולם מקבלים עליהם כל מלכות שמיים זה מזה, וכולם מקבלים עליהם כל מלכות שמיים זה מזה. ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש, לרצון בנחת רוח, בשפה ורב ונעימה קדושה, כולם כאחד עונים, ואומרים ביראה, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, ולא כל הארץ כבודו, ואופנים בחיות הקודש, ברעש גדול מנסים לעומת שרפים, לעומתם משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. לאל ברוך נמותיתנו למלך רחב וקיים, צמירות יאמרו תשפחות ישמיעו, כי הוא לבדו פועל גבורות, עושה חדשות בעל מלחמות, זורע צדקות מצמיח ישועות, בורא רפואות, לומר תהילות האדון הנפלאות, המחדש בטובו בחורים תמיד מעשה בראשית, אמור לו שמחים גדולים, כי לעולם חסדו. אור חדש לציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו, ברוך אתה אדוני יוצא מאורו. Page 154. אהבה רבה אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה יתרה המלת עלינו, אבינו מלכנו בעבור אבותינו ואמותינו שבטחו בך, ותלמדם חוקיך אם תתבונן ותלמדם. The middle of that page. וההרננו בתורתך ודאבק דברינו במצוותיך ויחל לבבינו ליחווה ולירא את שמך. וההרננו בתורתך ודאבק דברינו במצוותיך ויחל לבבינו ליחווה ולירא את שמך. ולא נבוש לעולם בעת, ולא נבוש לעולם בעת, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, Nagila, 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 Venismecha Bishuatecha. Avienu Shalom Erbekan Vadan, Betolechenu Kumamil Lertzenu, Kiel Shotata, Uban Vachatubia, Nikolam Belashun, Begerev Tanu, Shimcha Gadol, Serbianet, Lodotecha, Yacherecha Biaba, Baruch Adonai, Abochebe Musahel, Biaba. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך, בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם המזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Page 156. והיה ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור דבר בני ישראל. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת יציב ונכון וחיים וישר ונאמן ואהוב וחביב ונאמן ונעים ונורא וידיר ומטופל. אם תקבל וטוב ידך דבר זה, עמדנו לעולם באל. אמת אלוהים, אלוהי עולם מלכנו צור יעקב מגן אישנו. ורבדה הוא קיים ושמו קיים וחיסון אחרון. ומלכותו ואמונתו להקיים. אמת ואמונה חוברו והאמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו מלכנו מלך אבותינו ואמותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו ואמותינו יוצרנו צור ישותנו אלוהים מצילנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך עזרת אבותינו ואמותינו אתה הוא מעולם מגן ומשאיר לבניהם אחריהם וחודו ועדו ועדו. אמת הצור ראשון ואתה הוא האחרון ומבלעדיך אין לנו מלך אלא מושיע ממצרים גלתנו אדוני אלוהים מבית עבדים פדיתנו middle of that page. Ram Benisa Gadol Benora Mashpil Gim Umagbir Shfalim Motzi Asirim Ufode Anavim Ve'ozer Dali Ve'one La'amo Ve'one La'amo Be'et Shavam Ela Tehilot Le'el Elyon Tehilot Le'el Elyon Baruch Mevorach Moshe Miriam V'nei Yisrael lecha anu shikra besimcha rabba ve'amru kulam mi chamocha be'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh nora tehilot osef tehelet shira chadasha שבחו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו, והמליכו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך Le'olam Va'ed. I invite you to rise as you're able, and I'll ask Miriam again to be the responder for the Amens and the initiator of the Kedusha. Sur Yisrael, Kuma Ezrat Yisrael, Uvdechenu Mecha Yehuda v'Yisrael, Go'aleinu Adonai Tzvot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch Atah Adonai, God Yisrael. Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Moteinu v'Moteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ahel Agadol, Agibur Ba'anora, Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'koneh Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, U'mevii Go'el Livnei V'nehem, L'ma'an Shemo V'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Bechayei Metim Atah Rav Le'Hoshia, Mashiva Ruach U'Morida Geshem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei Metim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Berofei Cholim, U'Matir Asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afa ami chamocha ba'agru umido melach melech mimit umechayeh umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman ata la'achayot metim Baruch ata Adonai mechayeh hametim. And Miriam, are you willing to be the reader? Thank you.
V'kadesh et shemcha ba'olam, k'shem shemakti shemoto b'shnei marom, hakatuv al yad v'yecha, v'kara zeh el zeh v'yamar, kadosh, 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 Adonai tzva'ot. Kadosh, 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 Adonai tzva'ot, v'lo kol haaretz kevodo. Az b'kol ra'ash gadol adir v'chatat nashmim kol, v'natzim lumat tzarafim lumatan baruch yomeru. Baruch kavod Adonai nimcha.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai tzva'ot, v'lo kol haaretz kevodo. Ahaz b'kol rash gadol adir v'chazak mashmi'im kol, v'nasim lumat tzarafim lumatam baruch yomeru.
Baruch kavod Adonai nimkomo. Nimkom chamalkeinu tofia v'timlok aleinu, himahakim anachnu lach. Matai timlok b'tzion, v'karov v'yameinu le'olam ba'et tishkon. Tikadal v'tikadash b'tok Yerushalayim yircha, l'dor v'ador u'lanetzach netzachim.
Baruch Lord Adonai Nimakomo. Nimkomach Malkeinu Tofia v'timulach alenechanechim anachulach. Matai timloch b'tzion. V'karov v'yameinu le'olam ba'et tishkon. Tikadav v'tikadash b'tok Yerushalayim yircha, l'dor v'ador u'lanetzach netzachim. V'yemeinu ti'ena malchutecha kadav Amu b'shireu zecha, al yedei David Mashiach tzidkecha.
Yimlok Adonai le'olam el ha'etzion, l'dor v'ador, hallelujah.
Yimloch Adonai le'olam Elohai Etzion, l'dor v'ador, hallelujah. L'dor v'ador nagigod lecha, l'netzach netzachim kedushat chanati. ושבחנו ונמיתנו למושלם בהביאנו בגו וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. ישמח משה. Sabenu, 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 samachnu b'shuateinu. Sabenu, sabenu, sabenu b'shuateinu. Samachnu b'shuateinu. Okay, the Kaddish Shalem is found on page 167. And Miriam, again, I'm hoping will be responding. Yitkada v'yitkada shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yalma dibrachir tevi amlich bachute. V'chayichonu v'mochon v'chayidach u'beis Yisrael b'galav yizman kariv b'meru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehi shmei Rabbah. Ve'alamu al-me'alai. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'tumah v'yitaseh. Yitadav v'yitalev v'yitalav shemei rekudasha.
Riku.
Rihu la'el min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'nevan v'yalma v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yikabatsu v'tonda ho Yisrael kudama v'onu v'shmai v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Shalom Rabba min shemai v'chaim alin v'ho Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Aseh shalom v'rama v'yaseh shalom alin v'ho Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom to everyone who's joined us in the meantime. Susan, I believe, has joined us in the interim, as well as Harvey and Ruth and John and Marcia. So, and Ellen Kahn in Brookline. Wonderful. So wonderful to have this big group. Everyone's roused themselves from their post-inaugural torpor, and we're here. So we're going to be reading from Parashat Bo this week, and so thank you to Harriet for volunteering to read this week's parsha, which is great. And I will ask Susan if you're willing to be the gabbai and announce the various aliyot, and Norma is good. Norma has volunteered to read the English. And in response to the question I see in the chat, all the prayers that we will say, Lisa Berach and prayer for the country, will happen after the Torah.
I think we need some muting here.
We need what?
We need some muting. There's a lot of noise.
Yeah, so one note to everyone who is participating in the reading, if you have your book right next to your iPad, every time you turn the page, there is a big old rustle. So it is a good idea to either move the book away from the microphone of your device, or to adopt a practice of nearly silent page turning. Are better at that than others, but those are really your two options. Okay, great. So I'm just gonna share the screen so everyone can see the text of the Torah as Harriet reads it, and I will, but I'm going to turn it over to Susan.
Ellen, you're not muted.
Which Ellen?
Ellen in Brookline.
Ellen in Brookline.
Ellen, you just said hello to.
Ellen in Brookline is muted. Oh, now she's unmuted, but I'm going to mute her again. Oh, you're muted, Ellen. I think everyone who needs to be muted is muted.
Ellen Sarro is not muted.
Yes, I am. Says mute. Oh,
muted. Yeah. Okay. So I don't have this.
Jim, I don't have the bracha here for the Torah.
We can say it collectively.
Okay.
So anyone who would like to say it, I'll lead the Torah study. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kedishanu
B'mitzvotav
La'asot Divrei
Torah.
Okay, I don't have the citation for the full parsha. I just have the triennial verses. But we're starting in chapter 11 of Exodus. The first Aliyah is verses 4 to 10. Let's wait till we get it on the screen. Oh, here, is it on the screen? Okay, 4 to 10.
Okay. Vayomer Moshe Ko Amar Adonai B'chatzot halayla ani yotze b'tok Mitzrayim u'meit kol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim מבכור פרעה היושב על כיסאו עד בכור השפחה אשר אחר הרחתיים וכל בכור בהמה והייתה צעקה גדולה בכל ארץ מצרים אשר כמוהו לא נהיית וכמוהו לא תוסיף ולכל בני ישראל לא יחרץ כלף לשונו למאיש עד בהמה למען תדעון אשר יפלה אדוני בין מצרים ובין ישראל. וירדו כל עבדיך אלה אלי והשתחוו לי לאמור צא אתה וכל העם אשר ברגליך ואחרי כן אצא. ויצא מעם פרעה בהרי אב Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, lo yishma alechem paro, leman rebot moftai be'eretz Mitzrayim. Umoshe v'Aharon asu et kol hamoftim ha'ele lifnei paro. Vayechazek Adonai et lev paro, v'lo shalach et bnei Yisrael mi'artzo.
Moses said, "Thus says the Lord, toward midnight I will go forth among the Egyptians, and every firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, to the firstborn of the slave girl who is behind the millstones, and all the firstborn of the cattle. And there shall be a loud cry in all the land of Egypt, such as has never been or will ever be again, but not a dog shall snarl at any of the Israelites, at man or beast, in order that you may know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. Then all these courtiers of yours shall come down to me and bow low to me, saying, 'Depart, you and all the people who follow you. After that I will depart.' And he left Pharaoh's presence in hot anger. Now the Lord had said to Moses, 'Pharaoh will not heed you in order that my marvels may be multiplied in the land of Egypt.' Moses and Aaron had performed all these marvels before Pharaoh, but the Lord had stiffened the heart of Pharaoh so that he would not let the Israelites go from his land."
Okay, the next Aliyah, we're on chapter 12, verses 1 to 10.
Vayomer Adonai el Moshe v'el Aharon be'eretz Mitzrayim le'mor. HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim, rishon hu lachem l'chodshei hashana. Dabru el kol adat Yisrael le'mor, ba'asar lachodesh hazeh. Yikechu lachem eish se lebeit avot se labait. Imimat habait miot miseh. V'lakachu ushcheno hakarov el beito lemichsat nafsh nefashot ish lefi ochlo takosu al haseh. Se tamim zachar ben shana yeh lachem umin hakvasim umin haizim tikahu v'haya lachem lemishmeret Ad arba'a asar yom lachodesh hazeh, v'shachatu oto kol kahal adat Yisrael ben ha'arbaim, v'lakhu min hadam v'natnu al shtei hamezuzot v'al hamashkof, al habatim asher yochlu oto bahem, v'achlu et habasar balayla hazeh, Tuli eshu matzot al mamorim yochluhu, al tochlu mimenu naha, uvashel muvushal b'mayim, ki im tuli esh rosho al kara'av v'al kirboho, v'lo titrichu mimenu ad boker, Hanotar mimenu ad boker be'esh tisrofu.
The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall mark for you the beginning of the months. It shall be the first of the months of the year for you. Speak to the whole community of Israel and say that on the 10th of this month, each of them shall take a lamb to a family, a lamb to a household. But if the household is too small for a lamb, let him share one with the neighbor who dwells nearby in proportion to the number of persons. You shall contribute for the lamb according to what each household will eat. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a yearling male. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats, You shall keep watch over it until the 14th day of this month, and all the assembled congregation of the Israelites shall slaughter it at twilight. They shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they are to eat it. They shall eat the flesh that same night. They shall eat it roasted over the fire with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw or cooked in any way with water, but roasted, head, legs, and entrails over the fire. You shall not leave any of it over until morning. If any of it is left until morning, you shall burn it.
Okay, the third Aliyah, we'll be reading again, still chapter 12, verses 11 to 13.
וככה תאכלו אותו, מתניהם חגורים, נעליכם ברגליכם, ומקלותיכם בידכם, ואכלתם אותו בחיפזון, פסח הוא לאדוני. ועברתי בארץ מצרים בלילה הזה, והכיתי כל בחר בארץ מצרים, מאודם ועד בהמה, ובכל אלוהי מצרים יעשה שבטים אני אדוני, והיה הדם לכם לאות על הבתים אשר אתם שם, וראיתי את הדם, ופסחתי עליהם, ולא יהיה בכם נגף למשחית, בהכותי בארץ מצרים.
This is how you shall eat it, your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it hurriedly. It is a Passover offering to the Lord. For that night I will go through the land of Egypt and strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And I will mete out punishments to all the gods of Egypt, I the Lord. And the blood on the houses where you are staying shall be a sign for you. When I see the blood, I will pass over you so that no plague will destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt.
Okay, we're now in the fourth Aliyah. We'll be reading verses 14 to 16.
והיה היום הזה לכם לזיכרון, וחגותם אותו חג לאדוני, לדורותיכם חוקת עולם תחגוהו. 7 ימים מצות תאכלו, אך ביום הראשון תשביתו שאור מבתיכם, כי כל אוכל חמץ, ונכרתה הנפש ההיא מישראל, מיום הראשון עד יום השביעי. וביום הראשון מקרא קודש, וביום השביעי מקרא קודש יהיה לכם. כל מלאכה לא יעשה בהם, אך אשר יאכל לכל נפש, ולבדו יעשה לכם.
This day shall be to you one of remembrance. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord throughout the ages. You shall celebrate it as an institution for all time. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the very first day you shall remove leaven from your houses, for whoever eats leavened bread from the first day to the 7th day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. You shall celebrate a sacred occasion on the first day and a sacred occasion on the 7th day. No work at all shall be done on them. Only whatever person is to eat, that alone may be prepared for you.
Okay, now the fifth Aliyah, we're reading still in chapter 12, verses 17 to 20.
ושמרתם את המצות, כי בעצם היום הזה הוצאתי את צבאתכם מארץ מצרים, ושמרתם את היום הזה לדורותיכם חוקת עולם. בראשון ב14 יום לחודש בעצם תאכלו מצות עד יום ה11 לחודש בערב, 7 ימים. שיער לא יימצא בבתיכם, כי כל אוכל מחמצת ונכרתה הנפש ההיא מעדת ישראל בגר ובאזרח הארץ. כל מחמצת לא תאכלו, בכל משבותיכם תאכלו מצות.
You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for on this very day I brought your ranks out of the land of Egypt. You shall observe this day throughout the ages as an institution for all time. In the first month, from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. No leaven shall be found in your houses for 7 days. For whoever eats what is leavened, that person shall be cut off from the community of Israel, whether he is a stranger or a citizen of the country. You shall eat nothing leavened in all your settlements. You shall eat unleavened bread.
Okay, the sixth Aliyah, still chapter 12, verses 21 to 24.
ויקרא משה לכל זקני ישראל ויאמר עליהם, משכו וקחו לכם צאן למשפטכם ושחטו הפסח, ולקחתם אגודת אזוב וטבלתם בדם אשר בסף, והגעתם אל המשקוף ואל שתי המזוזות מדם אשר בסף, ואתם לא תצאו איש מפתח ביתו עד בוקר. ועבר אדוני לגנוב את מצרים, וראה את הדם על המשקוף ועל שתי המזוזות, ופסח אדוני על הפסח, ולא ייתן המשחית לבוא על בתיכם לנגוף.
One more, Harriet.
Oh, one more verse.
Through 24.
ושמרתם את הדבר הזה, וחוקת לך ולבניך עד עולם.
Moses then summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, Go, pick out lambs for your families and slaughter the Passover offering. Take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and apply some of the blood that is in the basin to the lintel and to the two doorposts. None of you shall go outside the door of his house until morning. For when the Lord goes through to smite the Egyptians, he will see the blood on the lintel and the doorposts, and the Lord will pass over the door and not let the destroyer enter and smite your home. You shall observe this as an institution for all time, for you and for your descendants.
Okay, and we're on the last Aliyah now, verses 25 to 28, still chapter 12.
כי תבואו אל הארץ, אשר ייתן אדוני לכם כאשר דיבר, ושמרתם את העבודה הזאת. והיה כי יאמרו עליכם בניכם, מה העבודה הזאת לכם? ואמרתם, זבח פסח הוא לאדוני, אשר פסח על בתי בני ישראל במצרים, נגפו את המצרים ואת בתינו הציל, ויקוד העם וישתחוו, וילכו ויעשו בני ישראל kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe v'Aharon ken asu.
And when you enter the land that the Lord will give you as he has promised, you shall observe this rite. And when your children ask you, what do you mean by this rite? You shall say, it is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord, because he passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians, but saved our houses. The people then bowed low in homage, and the Israelites went and did so. Just as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did.
Thank you both. Very nice.
Very nice. Yasher Koach. Thank you.
Yasher Koach,
The
Harriet.
Haftorah is Jeremiah chapter 46, verses 13 to 28. But we're not
Right.
going to do it quite yet.
Right. We'll do the Misha Berach first. So stop sharing. And I will invite. Oh, hello, Lori. Good Shabbos. Lori Wasserman. We've already said good Shabbos to Lori Feldman. All right, and I will invite everyone who so wishes to unmute themselves and to share the names of those people who are in need of healing. So, and I'll go around my Zoom room. So, if I don't call you right away, please be patient. For you might not be in the same place on my screen as you are on your screen. Okay, so we'll start with Sandy.
Ellen Zuniga, David Engel, Yair and Rosemary Alroy, Elaine Skolnick, Alvin Glazerman.
Thank you, Sandy. Let's see, Jim Leffert.
Thomas Kay and Dudley's dad.
Miriam.
Nikki Kermish, Eddie Bat Sarah, Sarah Bat Abigail, Jean Bat Hayedel, Amy Bat Rivka, and all those suffering from the COVID virus.
Petra and Lauren.
Ruth Bat Sarah.
Adina.
Gaby Schlesinger, Yona Bat Miriam David, Ziva Garbi.
Sherry.
Ruth Bat Sarah and Fredo Bat Hannah Gittel.
Susan Cohen.
Mary Kellerman, Gail Weisberg.
Norma.
Esther Wilner.
Harriet.
Sandra Olansky, Richard Ford, Paul Flicker, Inge de Wilde, Norman Newberg.
Ruth.
Laura Bathana.
Susan Brand.
Sarah Brand, Elizabeth Brand, Jennifer Chung, Veneer, and Celso.
Lori Feldman.
Lynn and Steve Bressler, Rob Golick, Todd Rakoff, and Larry DeCara.
Carol.
Lori Wasserman.
And Marsha.
Dory Swanberg.
Okay, and Ben Siegel.
Richard Siegel, Dory Gerber.
Okay, and I'll add Tamar Bat Miriam and Naftalia Gittel and my father, Jim Morgan. And so the Misha Berach is found on page 173. Misha Berach Avotenu Kor bracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor beracha yavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit. Let us say, Amen. All right, so let's see, we'll stop the share again. Do we have a volunteer for the haftarah? I'm not looking at people's screens, so if you would like to volunteer, you'll have to actually unmute yourself and say so, because I'm doing something else. I don't have my usual 2 screens today, so.
I'm the patron. I would be willing if there are no other volunteers.
All right, and if there's no other volunteers, I'm thrilled to have Petra and Lauren.
So as I was jumping the gun before, we're reading Jeremiah chapter 46, verses 13 to 28.
Lovely. Okay, so we will look, we'll turn to page 175 for the Haftarah blessing, after which we will turn to, let's see, it is page 395 for the other one. Now I'm stuck. Oh boy, I tell you, it's not easy. Okay, there we go. So Petra and Lauren, when you're ready.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neviyim tovim v'ratzav b'drehem hanemarim ba'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'b'nei ha'emet v'tzedek. The word which the Lord spoke to the prophet Jeremiah about the coming of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon to attack the land of Egypt. Declare in Egypt, proclaim in Migdol, proclaim in Noph, in Tapanhes. Say, take your posts and stand ready, for the sword has devoured all around you. Why are your stalwarts swept away? They did not stand firm, for the Lord thrust them down. He made many stumble. They fell over one another. They said, up, let us return to our people, to the land of our birth, because of the deadly sword. There they called Pharaoh, king of Egypt, braggart, who let the hour go by. As I live, declares the king, whose name is Lord of hosts, as surely as Tabor is among the mountains and Carmel is by the sea, so shall this come to pass. Equip yourself for exile, fair Egypt, you who dwell secure, for Noph shall become a waste, desolate without inhabitants. Egypt is a handsome heifer. A gadfly from the north is coming. The mercenaries too in her midst are like stall-fed calves. They too shall turn tail. Flee as one and make no stand. Their day of disaster is upon them, their hour of doom. She shall rustle away like a snake as they come marching in force. They shall come against her with axes, like hewers of wood. They shall cut down her forest, declares the Lord. Though it cannot be measured, for they are more numerous than locusts and cannot be counted. Fair Egypt shall be shamed, handed over to the people of the north. The Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, has said, I will inflict punishment on Ammon of No, and on Pharaoh, on Egypt, her gods and her kings, on Pharaoh and all who rely on him. I will deliver them into the hands of those who seek to kill them, into the hands of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, and into the hands of his subjects. But afterward she shall be inhabited, again as in former days, declares the Lord. But you have no fear, my servant Jacob. Be not dismayed, O Israel. I will deliver you from far away, your folk from their land of captivity. And Jacob shall have calm and quiet, with none to trouble him. But you have no fear, my servant Jacob, declares the Lord, for I am with you. I will make an end to all the nations among which I have banished you, but I will not make an end of you. I will not leave you unpunished, but I will chastise you in measure. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol ha'olamim, tzadik b'kol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer ve'oseh, ha'midaber u'mkayem, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek. Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu, v'ne'emanim devarecha, v'davar echad midvarecha, Ahor lo yashuv rekam, ki el melech ne'eman v'rachaman ata, baruch ata Adonai, ha'el ha'ne'eman b'kol devarav, rachem al Tzion ki hu hayenu, ve'alaluva nefesh toshia, v'mahara yamenu, baruch ata Adonai, Mesameach Tzion devanecha, Samheinu Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'elahu hanavi abdecha, U'v'malchut Beit David mishlecha, Bimharea yavo v'yagel libenu, Al kiso lo yeshev zar, V'lo yinhalu od harim et kevodo, Ki b'shem kodecha nishbata lo, Shelo yikteho leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen David, al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'nevi'im ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu, likdusha v'limenucha, lekavod u'letifaret, al hakol Adonai Eloheinu, anachnu modim la, U'mafakim otah, yitbarach shemcha b'fi kol chai, tamid leolam va'ed, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha'shabbat. Amen.
Yasher Koach to both of you. Thank you so much. And now we will turn to our the prayer for the country. I see that Anne is not here today, so I'll ask Carol if you would like to. Carol, I would invite you to read the prayer for the country. I'll put it up on the screen, and we'll figure out what page it's on because I don't remember off the top of my head. Page 177.
Okay, can you hold on a second? It's too small. Wait.
Not a problem. You want me to? I
I
can
got it. I have it. I have
you
it.
got it. Okay, great. Because I can make it bigger on the screen.
No,
Also.
no, I've got it. A prayer for our country. Our God and God of our ancestors, with mercy, accept our prayer on behalf of our country and its government. Pour out your blessing upon this land, upon its inhabitants, upon its leaders, its judges, officers, and officials who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of the public. Help them understand the rules of justice you have decreed so that peace and security, happiness and freedom will never depart from our land. Adonai, God, whose spirit is in all creatures, we pray that your spirit be awakened within all the inhabitants of our land. Uproot from our hearts hatred and malice, jealousy and strife. Plant love and companionship, peace and friendship among the many peoples and faiths who dwell in our nation. Grant us the knowledge to judge justly, the wisdom to act with compassion, and the understanding and courage to root out poverty from our land. May it be your will that our land be a blessing to all who dwell on earth, and may you cause all peoples to dwell in friendship and freedom. Speedily fulfill the vision of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. For all of them, from the least of them to the greatest, shall know me, and let us say Amen.
Amen. Right, so I see that Mikkel and Marty have joined us. Good Shabbos to both of you. And I would open the floor to a few comments. We can't go on for too long because it was a long Torah reading. Harry, you did yeoman service today. Thank you very much for getting through that whole thing. Ben, I see your hand up.
Thanks. I'm struck with two things about this parasha. One is that with Moses' leadership, the people of Israel could psychologically get out of the mindset of servitude and oppression and come together to perform a ritual that actually saved their lives. The second one is that we always talk about the Israelites taking money for the Egyptians, but on chapter 11, line 2s through to the end of the paragraph, tell the people to borrow each man from his neighbor and each woman from hers objects of silver and gold. Here's the important lines. The Lord disposed the Egyptians favorably toward the people. Moreover, Moses himself was much esteemed in the land of Egypt among Pharaoh's courtiers and among the people. So there's hope, even with the tyrannical government, that there will be some people who really understand the notions of justice leading to reparations.
I've always loved that verse, Ben. Thank you so much for raising it up. I think that is such an important point, right? And the way in which the Israelites really rely in some pretty fundamental way on the Egyptians for the mechanism of their freedom, despite the fact that the Egyptians will suffer in the context of the liberation of the Israelites. Go ahead, Jim.
That's a very important point, but I just wanted to mention that it makes sense because you're not at home today, but I just wanted to note that your dog did not snarl at all during the Torah reading.
My dogs are not big snarlers. They're more barkers than snarlers, thank God. But that is also a very good point. Other insights or questions for the group. Sherry.
Well, I was interested in the word karet. The person who doesn't observe the Pesach is going to be karet. Is it cut off? Is that separated out from the, like excommunicated, or does it mean death, put to death?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's always been an interesting question for me, right? When the Torah talks about a death sentence, right? Is that carried out? Is it carried out by people? Is it carried out by God? And what is actually being cut off from one's people? I mean, it seems to me that there's some sort of symbolism here, right? That this first permutation of the Passover sacrifice, right, where the blood was actually spread on the lintels, right, and there was an actual there was actually going to be a distinction between those who performed the ritual, right, whose lives would be saved, and those who didn't perform the ritual, who would be, I guess, cut off. And so I've always thought of it as spiritual, but in this first instance, it seems quite literal. Miriam seems to have a response.
I cannot remember the authority, but this question came up in a class I had some years ago. And I think that the interpretation in that context, which wasn't specific to this verse, was that it meant excommunication from the community. I would suggest we could also read it symbolically that those who choose not to participate in the communal life of a community are cutting themselves off from the benefits and blessings of being part of that community.
And it is really interesting to me that among Jews, right, many of whom don't have a regular ritual engagement with Jewish practice, right? But many Jews who don't have any other ritual practice have the practice of marking the Passover, and that this is in some ways seems to be understood generally, not by necessarily by scholars, but sort of in the general population of Jewish people, right? That this is some sort of minimal marker of belonging in the community is this particular ritual. Miriam, and then Harriet.
I also just would like to note that I think the reason that it is so widely observed in the American Jewish community is because it's a freedom celebration that resonates with traditional American values. And for that reason, it's especially appropriate that we're reading this parsha this week.
Yeah, exactly. This
Yes.
feels, we feel, every Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day feels like we should be reading from these particular passages. So the fact that the calendar generally behaves that way is hard. Go ahead, Harriet.
I was just thinking about this thing about being cut off from Israel, that we could interpret that. We don't have to interpret that over time. That is, when you're in a crisis situation, you have to be very clear sometimes about who's in and who's out. And I think there's some of these very stringent laws that we come across in the Torah can be understood in that way. That whereas today, except in the minds of people who want to think of it that way, nobody is quote unquote cut off if they don't follow a particular practice, because in fact they can find some other group that is glad to have them. So if we go back to the passage in the Torah, there is no other group. You're either in or out of this group that's about to leave Egypt. So I think we can look at this as kind of crisis mode without thinking about applying it to a modern society, although some people would like to do that, and that we want to embrace different modes of practice and different modes of observance rather than thinking about cutting people off or out. Yeah. That would be my way of looking at it. Crisis mode versus.
Right. I can sort of imagine, Harriet, that most of us on this call, and could go out on a limb here, that most of us have sort of a basic pluralist understanding of Judaism. I think that there are many, of course, congregations that don't, and that there are sort of stricter boundaries pertaining to Shabbat observance, pertaining to Kashrut observance, and other things.
Yes.
That would I think feel much more concrete than the way that than in the kind of community that, at least, and again here I'll switch from talking about us, right, to talking about me, right, with my sort of my extremely pluralistic sort of bent. So it's but yeah, I do think, Sherry, right, that for many people, right, feeling cast off from their community does feel like a kind of death, right? And it can be really a powerful and powerfully negative experience. Go ahead, Jim. You're muted though.
It's interesting, this whole issue of being cut off came up a lot in our Mea class that we're currently in about Jewish thinkers. And we've been hearing various things. One of the people in the class, if I remember correctly, said that, I think it was Soloveitchik, said that this person could nonetheless play a leadership role in the congregation, even if they didn't observe Shabbat. But that the whole point was that the modern era poses tremendous challenges to the notion of boundaries being set so that some people are considered outside the pale. And with the Enlightenment in the 17th century and the 18th century, the exclusion of Spinoza by the Jewish community was kind of a scandal in enlightened places in Europe. And Moses Mendelssohn spoke up and said very firmly, and he was also thinking about how Jews were being persecuted by authorities in different countries who were not, Christian countries. And he said that it's necessary that the state have the power to enact laws and to enforce these laws by coercion if necessary in order for the public general well-being. But why should a religious community enact this kind of enforcement of coercion? Because religion is a matter of conscience. And why would any religion want to force somebody to observe or believe in something that they don't actually really believe in? What do they gain by that? So it was interesting that he made that argument.
That's a very enlightenment type of argument, and I think the counter position, right, would be that we're not actually talking about anyone's conscience. We're talking about people's behavior.
Well, that's correct. That's a post-enlightenment point of view. But anyway, that came up as a big issue at that time.
So we don't have to believe, right, that God will actually jump over our houses. We just have to put the blood on the lintel anyway. So otherwise, we'll be cut off. All right. Mikkel, you get the last word because we have to move to our closing first.
I wanted to connect some of this to Ben's comment at the beginning and say it's interesting also in light of the Haftarah that we read last week, wasn't it? Which talked about an Egyptian expulsion from Egypt, an Egyptian outmigration. And here a little bit later, when the outmigration of the Jews is described, the Torah says it was a mixed multitude. There were many Egyptians who went with them. And so that makes me wonder, if there is any sort of shred of historical memory that is being woven into this narrative here, what actually might have happened, when you put these two different tellings together, the Haftarah from last week and this from this, but it definitely seems to be telling us that this is not a sort of exclusionary group that is leaving.
Right, and I think that you're pointing to something that is very important, Nicole, right? That even at the same time as the Torah is trying to be very, very clear about boundaries, right? It's also acknowledging, right, that those boundaries are forever fluid, right? And it's always been sort of a lovely coincidence that in the sort of slightly not slightly, I would say the very nerdy slang of rabbinical schools, right? Senior rabbinical students are called Erev Rav, right? And because they're on the eve of becoming a rabbi. And I always liked the fact that I was part of the real Erev Rav, right? The real mixed multitude, the folks who are leaving. And again, I think that just sort of points to this sort of notion that we may have some sort of fantasy, right, about a unitary group forging freedom for itself, right? But that is just not going to happen, right? It's always going to require an Erev Rav, right? So as many each group that needs to liberate itself needs to also find allies among the dominant population.
I just wanted to correct something I said a minute ago. It wasn't Soloveitchik, but it was in our book that we read in our book group about Jewish peddlers and storekeepers that in Orthodox congregations in the United States in the 19th century, there was an issue of storekeepers who kept their store open on Shabbat. Could they carry out a role of leadership in the synagogue? And we were given examples of Orthodox rabbis who said, of course they still can.
Great, thank you, Jim. I'll just close up this statement. So when I was a recent convert to Judaism. I was living in Maine, and there was an Orthodox synagogue, but by this time I think it was conservative because they needed to count women in order to make a minyan. But they got very upset when the new rabbi came in and wanted to change the Shabbat services from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And why did they protest? Well, because they all had to go to work by 10 o'clock. So if they wanted to go to shul, they had to go to shul before work started. So, blue collar congregations, there's not maybe that many congregations dominated by blue collar people anymore among the Jews, but this was one of them, which I found to be very, 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 very interesting, and also rather tough to make it to shul on time. So anyway, all right. So with that, we will turn back to, thank you everyone for your comments and conversation. We will turn to our closing prayers on page 199 of the red prayer book. Let's see if here we go. Yismehu b'malchutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'kor oneg Shabbat. Yismehu b'malchutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'kor oneg Shabbat. Mekadosheh mekadosheh shvi Shabbat. Kulan yispehu v'yatanagu mituvecha Shabbat. Yismehu v'malchutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'kor oneg Shabbat. Yismehu v'malchutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'kor oneg Shabbat. V'shvihi ratzita bo v'gidashto Shabbat v'chemdat yamim u'toho karata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'kor oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'kor oneg Shabbat. Zecher Maaseh Bereshit Shabbat. Zecher Maaseh Bereshit Shabbat. Page 201. Asim Shalom Tova Uveracha Chem V'Chesed V'Rachamim Alinu v'yalko Yisrael v'yalko Yisrael Amecha Baruchenu Avinu kulanu ke'echad be'or panecha. Baruchenu Avinu kulanu ke'echad be'or panecha ki v'or panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu tochat chaim v'ahavat chesed u'tzedaka u'bracha v'rachamim v'chaim v'shalom v'tov be'enecha levarech et amecha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה, בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Page 204. אין כאלוהינו, אין כאדוננו, אין כמלכנו, אין כמו שריינו, non como nuestro Dios, non como nuestro Señor, non como nuestro Rey, non como nuestro Salvador. Mich Eloheinu, mich Adonenu, mich Malkeinu, mich Moshienu, ken como nuestro Dios, ken como nuestro Señor, ken como nuestro Rey, ken como nuestro Salvador. No del Eloheinu, no del Adonenu, no del Malkeinu, no del Moshienu, lo haremos nuestro Dios, lo haremos nuestro Señor, lo haremos nuestro Rey, lo haremos nuestro Salvador. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshiach, bendicho nuestro Dios, bendicho nuestro Señor, bendicho nuestro Rey, bendicho nuestro Salvador. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshiach, tú el nuestro Dios, tú el nuestro Señor, tú el nuestro Rey, tú el nuestro Salvador. I invite you to rise for the Aleinu as you are able, page 205. Aleinu l'shabel, l'adon hakol, l'teku d'la liyotzeh bereishit, shelo asan v'goyei haratzon, lo samanu k'mishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu kor'im, u'mishtachavim u'modim, לפני מלך מלכי המלאכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומשה ויקרו בשמיים עמם, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אינו, אמת מלכנו את סולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום וישיבות לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים עמם, ועל הארץ מתחת אמו. כתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני מלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יחיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. So I will invite everyone to share, if they would like, the name of someone, if they're remembering a loved one for Kaddish today, for Yartzeit. Please unmute yourself and I will call your name. I see Mikkel.
Yes, I am saying Kaddish for Adele Greenberg, who was my father's beloved companion for the last 13 years of his life.
Thank you. If no one else is saying Kaddish today, then I'll invite Mikkel for you to lead us in the Kaddish.
Where are we? Which page? Let's see.
Page, I believe it's 207.
Oh, I see, 206.
207.
207. Okay. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah.
Amen.
Amen.
V'alma divra chortei v'yomlich malchutei b'chayachon v'yomachon v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael b'agala v'zman kari v'imru Amen.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah B'Barach Le'olam U'Me'omaya.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudesha brichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata v'adam v'alma v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehei Shlomo Rabba min Shemayim v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Aseh shalom b'mrumav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Amen.
All right, so I will invite people to make brief, please, announcements.
We have some things coming up. On the February 14th at 11 o'clock on Sunday the 14th, we're having a special AM Schmooze and Learn. Our own Sidra Ezrahi is going to be joining us from Israel, and she's going to be talking to us about modern day Paitanim, liturgical poets, specifically Paul Celan, Yehuda Amichai, and Dan Pagas. And then 2 weeks later, on the 28th, our book group is going to meet. And 3 days before that, on the 25th, which is a Thursday evening, we're going to be celebrating Purim. And I also wanted to add that I'm going to be sending out an announcement shortly that we're going to be, Lori Feldman is going to be putting together as part of our next newsletter, a booklet, a compendium of Pesach recipes. I know it seems early, but you know, with publication deadlines and things, you can start thinking about your favorite recipes and send them to me or to Lori by February 15th. That would be great, because that's going to be a new newsletter feature, Pesach recipes.
Great.
I have can I make a quick announcement?
Go for it. Go for it.
This isn't a Minion announcement, but if you want something lively, tomorrow afternoon, the Yiddish Book Center and a bunch of other organizations are sponsoring an online, it's, 20 years of the klezmer Conservatory Band. It's a lot of klezmer. And if you want something lively as we emerge into the light here, go to the website of the Yiddish Book Center and you can find out about it. I think it's sometime in the afternoon, maybe 3 o'clock. It's just going to be an hour and a half of.
I think it's at 2 o'clock.
What?
I believe it's at 2 o'clock.
The Klezmer Conservative
maybe it's at 2 o'clock. Yeah.
Klezmer Conservative Band is.
But it's going to be partly historical performances and what?
The Klezmer Conservative Band is 40 years old. Okay.
40 years old. Okay.
Actually,
that's it.
I know about this a little because Hankus is using clips from my film. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So we'll see clips from your film.
It would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I also wanted to announce that there are many learning opportunities available. Two of that are worth noting. That Scholar Stream, which is a program of the conservative movement's rabbinical seminaries, that have very interesting presentations coming up this coming week, Tuesday and Wednesday evenings. The Wednesday evening ones are appropriate. Bye, Susan. Are appropriate for the West Coast, so they start at 10 p.m. our time. But they're all available on video if you're not a late night person, and so just you can go to our Minion Bulletin and find access to them there, and then there's a series through the Jewish Women's Archive, which is based here in Brookline, of wonderful book conversations with authors, and Judith Rosenbaum, who's the director of that institution. So go to their website and you can sign up for these free book discussions, which is also seem very good. So, all right. So, Ellen, do you have a question? But I see you're on the phone, so I'm going to let you stay on the phone. All right. So, good Shabbos, everyone. We will now turn to Adon Olam, and I have to run because I got to get back to work. But everyone can feel free to stick around after Adon Olam. And have a conversation. All right.
Rabbi Morgan, you're one of those Jews who works on Shabbat, I guess.
Exactly. Ellen, what's
Rabbi
up?
Morgan,
Yeah, what's up?
is there a tree seder at 4 o'clock on Wednesday?
That's right. So we have exactly. So 4 o'clock on Wednesday, if you're so moved, we're going to have a Tu B'Shvat Seder. And people who are at CCB, I'm afraid I can't offer delivery to the greater Boston area. But if you're at CCB, you can. I'll bring by some nuts and berries for you to participate in the Tu B'Shvat Seder. But if you're a member of the Worship and Study Minion, please feel free to join us. You'll just have to make sure you have your own nuts and berries and various colors of grape juice to participate fully. All right. So Adon Olam is found. I always forget what page it's on. But we will figure out that soon.
211.
211. Thank you. Adon Olam Hashem Alach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nihra Li'et Nasa B'chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא הולך והוא יחיה בתפארה והוא יחיה בתפארה והוא אחד ואין שני להמשילו להכבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמשרה ולא העוז והמשרה והוא אלי וחי גואלי בצור חבלי בעת צרה והוא ניסי ומנוס לי מנקוסי ביום מקרא מנקוסי ביום מקרא בידו אף כי ברוכי בעת אישן ואירה ואמרוכי גבייתי אדוני לי ולא אירה אדוני לי ולא אירה. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
Have a wonderful Shabbos, and I will look forward to seeing everyone next Shabbos, if not earlier.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
That's all.
Shabbos.
Shalom.
Okay, bye.
And if Harriet is still on, yes, you are. I wanted to say Yasher Koach on a beautiful reading.
Yes,
Got
Yasher
it.
Koach. Yes, was beautiful. Very nice. Hi, everybody.
Be well, everyone. Have
Hello.
a good week.
Be
Have a
well.
good week.
Yes.
Bye.
That's I wanted to Jim